Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Unstuck movement. Awesome to have you here. I'm your host, Rob Z. This platform was created to help you break those chains in your life that are holding you back personally and professionally. Today, we have an incredible guest on with us, Joseph Kincaid. He is the owner of No Limits Nutrition Center in Richmond, Virginia. Today, we're talking perseverance, business, failure, growth, fitness, and how do we grow our business? How do we scale? How do we get past those limiting beliefs or those things that are holding us back in our professional life? And Joe, I like to jump in with a question right off the bat as we get this conversation started, man. What would you say is the hardest truth about business ownership that you've experienced?
The hardest truth I've experienced, I think, is that, and this might be a cliche one, but it is that it's going to take a lot longer and it's going to be a lot harder than you think it is. And I know a lot of people say that. And I think depending on where you're at in your journey, it means different things. Like in the beginning, it might be like you might not believe it. It might be like yeah, right. Like, okay. Or maybe that's not for everybody, or maybe you make a little bit of progress and you think you've got it made, which is a mistake I made early on. But I think more often than not, it takes so much more out of you than you think it will. And it takes a whole lot longer than you would expect it to as well. Normally,
yeah, man.
Yeah.
Great advice too, because especially you might hear that and it might be like, oh yeah, sure, I bet it does. Right. But you can forget it when you're in it. You can forget while you're in it. Oh, right. You have to slowly build this and expect that. Like, it's going to take longer than you think. And I heard somebody say once, and I think this is very true. If I think it's going to take a month, it's going to take 6. If I think it's going to take 6 months, it's going to take a year. If I think it's going to take a year, it's going to take like 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So it's just like understanding that, because you can really get day to day, right? We can get lost in expecting something to happen. It's not happening yet. Why isn't it happening yet? And that can really screw with your head. But when you pull yourself back and look at the grand scheme of things, it's like, of course it had to take that long to get to where I was. It makes sense. Hindsight's always 20/20, right? So trying to help somebody with that can be difficult. And I think it's really important what you said. We need to hear that. It needs to be understood, because you're going to hit walls and you're going to be like, oh, right. It's supposed to happen this way. This is how we grow.
Yes.
I think it's a really good point to start off with, and a really good place to start off with. So as we jump into the podcast, this platform was created because I wanted to help people understand that you can find incredible breakthrough in your life through the example of others. If you feel like you're in that place right now, your business is growing slowly, you're wondering why it's taking so long, use this conversation as an example. We're sponsored by the Connected Leaders Academy. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com. And also, if you're the expert at what you do, but you really want to be the go-to authority in your field, you want to make a lasting impact on people's lives, and you want to create incredible connections for yourself personally and professionally, I encourage you to launch your own platform, get your own podcast off the ground. If you want to do that, you can join our wait list for the Pro Podcaster Academy at robzwentz.com. Joseph Kincaid with us today is the owner of No Limits Nutrition Center in Richmond, Virginia, a business that he started at 21 years old. Now at 31, he has navigated the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, learning key lessons in resilience, leadership, and growth. When you were going through that beginning phase, understanding it's going to take a lot longer than you expected, how did you personally navigate that when you hit that wall and you knew you had to keep pushing through? Do you have an example of a time when you were at that spot when you thought, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, but you just kept moving along?
That's the thing, is like when I started in those first earlier years, I didn't understand that. And I think that's one of the reasons that not understanding that is one of the reasons it took me so long to even get to where I am now. Because I didn't understand that, which led me to make improper decisions along the way, which led to it actually taking longer. Where if I had truly understood that and listened to maybe some of the people around me, but simultaneously at the time, I don't really feel like there were a lot of people around me that could help me. I think it would have been quicker, and I understand it now, but then I didn't understand it. So that is one of the main things that led to me making as many of the mistakes I did in the beginning. So yeah,
That's good insight, man. And same here. I started when I left my radio career back in 2017. I started a digital marketing company, and within the first 6 months, like the company took off. In the first year, I more than doubled my income that I had previously had, but I didn't prepare for that. So I was not in debt starting the business, made more money than I'd ever made by double, and then ended up in a lot of debt that I'm still to this day pulling myself out of because I made bad financial decisions because I had too much money and not enough understanding of what to do with it.
That's exactly what happened to me. Yeah.
And that early success can, if you're not prepared, can really screw you. And I was listening to people that I like online who were like, who had great business people. And I'd hear this advice of like, don't spend the money, save the money, do this, do that, diversify, put it in, reinvest it, man. And it didn't matter. It's like I had to make the mistake for some reason.
Everyone has to, I think. And I think it's super important that you do, because if you make it then, that's going to be a lot better than making it further down the road where, maybe 10 times the amount of money is on the line or something like, so you have to pay. It's just a lesson I think most people do have to actually experience themselves. It's one of the biggest ones. And sometimes you're paying that figurative and literal debt for quite a while, because of it.
But that's a great way to look at it, dude. That's really a great way to look at that is, well, if I wouldn't have made this on a small scale at the beginning, what would have happened to me 5-10 years down the road?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, when it happened to me, it's like, it felt like I was kind of losing everything that I had, worked for, even though I'd really only worked for it for a couple years, maybe. And in the moment, I mean, especially like you said, you go from making X amount of money and then you work for yourself and then you double what you're making and you kind of don't really have a true grasp on how you should handle that. So you're going to make certain decisions which are going to cost you.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, you'll see people who, but then if you get away from it, and obviously I'm further along now than I was when I made those mistakes. Let's call it 8 years ago, where if I lost everything now, it would truly be terrible. Cause now like I'm a homeowner, I'm married. I have like back then I was 23 years old. I was single, didn't own a home. The worst, I mean, there's a lot of bad things that happened to me, but none of it was nothing I could come back from.
Yeah.
Whereas is now, if I lost everything, it's like, I do also feel like I could come back from it. That's one of the best parts about entrepreneurship is actually gaining the skills to do certain things. And, if you were to start at zero, typically you could actually get to where you are now, probably a lot faster than you would, because I would know all these things now. But so I'm thankful it happened when it did. I'm thankful that I didn't quit when it happened, because I think that's the other big thing. A lot of people, they get punched in the beginning and they're done. They're like, all right, this wasn't for me. And they go back to doing whatever they were doing, which there's nothing wrong with that. But that's the biggest part too, is the perseverance and just the kind of, it's almost like you kind of have to be dumb to do it. And it's because there's risk. I think people who are super smart, they're very adverse to risk.
Yeah.
And I might have taken some risk a few times that they really didn't pan out. But if I wasn't okay with doing that, then I wouldn't be where I am. So
yeah, it's kind of like blindly ignorant. My mom can be a bit delusionally optimistic, and I think I got a little bit of that too, to where it's like this delusional optimism. Well, it's just going to work out. Yeah. Right. And that's a good thing, but it has to be tethered to truth and reality, because it can get out of control. And I think that's where I can fall in that category, but be aware of like, okay, I'm optimistic, but there's got to be a structure to it. There's got to be a plan for it. There's got to be goals, because with just optimism by itself, that could be a problem.
Not enough. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, there's this great quote. I don't know who originally said it, but Ed Milet's one of the business guys online that I love to follow. And he talks about your financial thermometer, which is really true.
Hmm.
We have a certain thermometer where we feel we're comfortable at. And you have to raise the temperature of that thermometer because like it's the same thing happened to you when I made a bunch of money, my financial thermometer didn't like where I was, even though I was like, wow, this is amazing. I'm making this money. My financial thermometer naturally brought me back to where I thought I was supposed to be,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
a great analogy there. Yeah.
and I always found that to be really true. So you have to put the time in personal growth, but also professional growth to raise that temperature to where you feel comfortable making more like you. And I'm curious for yourself, was there something like subconsciously you felt like you didn't deserve the success you were having, or was it just was it something totally different?
Mm. No, there was nothing subconscious. I do believe in the subconscious a lot and how it can affect things, but I wouldn't say it was that. I'd say it was more so just being 22 or 23 and having more money than a lot of the other people I knew at my age, and just having like simultaneously the freedom to kind of
Yeah.
do whatever I want, even though, everybody knows that that's part of the sacrifice you make at being an entrepreneur. You don't actually have you have a freedom in one definition, but in the other definition of it, you don't. Like it requires more work than you otherwise would normally be doing. Um, that's another thing I had wrong when I started, because you'll hear like regular people say that, oh, it's so great getting to work for yourself. I bet you can do whatever you want. So you kind of like, oh yeah, I can do whatever I want, and that's when
That's when you start doing whatever you want.
take your foot off the gas and things fall to the wayside, and um, you take and bad things happen. So you have to stay focused as much as you can, and honestly, the bigger you get, the more focus it requires most of the time. So
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I wouldn't say that it was anything. It was more so just um, making rash decisions, not really thinking the decisions through, and um, thinking, I don't know, just a delusion that it was fine.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
curious, being in the fitness industry, I mean, there's so many, it's such a flooded market, tons of information out there, tons of people who are doing it successfully, tons that aren't. So when you go into the industry that you're in, doing what you're doing, how do you find a unique way to do what you're doing? Because I feel like when it comes to, well, anything in life, there's nothing new under the sun, but especially
Yeah.
in fitness, I feel like everything's been talked about, and you can find the same information from different people and the same thing, like products and things like that. How did you set yourself apart and stand out?
A big part of this really depends on the market you're in. So, if you're looking to do something brick and mortar like I did, is there already something like what I want to do in the city I live in? For me, there wasn't, and that was one of the big reasons that I did decide to start my business, because there was nothing. So there was a gap in the market. I identified it, and
What was the
yeah,
gap you identified?
there was no locally owned brick and mortar sports nutrition supplement stores in Richmond. There
Okay.
was chain ones, corporate ones, and I actually worked at one of the chain and corporate ones before I did it, and I was not a fan of their processes and their culture, and essentially the end result that they wanted to give the customer. And being someone who is very passionate about fitness and health and helping people, it didn't really sit right with me to even work there. So that's when I was like, I had been to another locally owned store in another place where I was from. I really loved the experience I had there. And I was just like, man, I wish I could recreate that experience at a place here. And then that's when I just started to get the idea for it. And I think between the time I had the idea to really do it and decided I wanted to do it to the time it got open, it was only 8 months. I think I did it pretty quickly for someone that young.
Yeah.
Uh, because it's hard, and there's a lot of like lessons you learn around along the way, like how financing works and how it's kind of impossible when you're like how to secure a lease for a building, how to, like, inventory works, budgeting. there's just all these things that you kind of think will be easy. They're not easy at all. So it's just funny because you never really learn those. You'll never really know how hard it is until you just were to do that. But,
very true, man. And I was on your website, nolimitsnutritioncenter.com, and I was going down through the About Us section, and I love that you have your core values right there on the website. A lot of companies don't do that, especially fitness companies don't put their core values up there, right? So your core values: communication is everything, raise your standards, encourage others through empathy, act with urgency, learn something new. I'm assuming because you put these on the website that you truly do apply them and live by them in your probably personal life, but also professional life. How important have those core values been, and how closely do you live by them on a daily basis?
Well, it's funny you brought those ones up, and I'm glad you did because we've actually updated them. There's more now.
Oh, okay.
And now those ones are still in there, and there's just 5 more. But yeah, we actually have the new one. We have like a nice graphic of it framed and printed in the store. I guess the website update. It hasn't been that long since we updated them, so I need to have them do that. But we try to really, we use them as a guide for just making decisions, like small and big decisions, and also corrective action. Like if something is going on in the store and it clearly is the wrong thing, it's very easy to look at what happened and then look at the core values and be like, which of these did we not do, or which of these are we not living up to? And if we continue to not live up to it, how is that going to affect us in the long run? And then simultaneously, you can ask yourself, like, if we can live up to these, where should that put us, as time goes on? And a big one for us, one of the biggest ones is always being community. And, that kind of ties in with the question you asked me a couple minutes ago. It's finding something special, especially in a convoluted industry like fitness, it really depends on what's in your community. Like if I lived in a place that already had a really great nutrition store that I was a big fan of, I never would have done it because it's like, there's no gap there. It's there. It exists. So it just depends on where someone's at, unless they want to get into e-com, but that's totally different. And that's even harder because it's very hard to separate yourself there. I mean, it's almost impossible, but yeah.
But I really love, just going by your brand and the way we were talking about, like just the style of what you're using, your colors, your logo, everything. It stands out, man. It feels, kind of like modern retro kind of thing.
That's that's what we wanted it to be.
Yeah, man. It's cool. It's fun to look at. It looks fun, basically, whenever I look at the website.
Thank you. Yeah.
Is that so? I assume that fitness has been a part of your life your entire life.
Yeah, since I was 17 that's really when I got into it. It was in high school, and fell in love with it. Yeah. And then it's interesting too. I obviously still love it a lot. But I would say, especially now, there are more times where I struggle with it than I did in the past. And I think it's just because it's part of what I do for work and have done for work for so long that sometimes actually taking care of myself just feels like, that is work. It is work to take care of yourself, but I get it. The lines blur between it being work and it being like self-care and self-love, which is what it's supposed to be viewed as. And I struggle. That's one of the things I struggle with the most right now, actually, is just being consistent in the areas I need to be consistent with for myself personally. And I know it's because I've just been doing what I've been doing for so long that sometimes I just view it as work and not what it should be viewed as.
So give me an example of one of those things. I think this is important to talk about too, because this kind of stuff, especially if you're a fitness business in the fitness industry, and you blur the lines between, like you said, your self-care, your fitness, and the business that you run. What's an example where you feel like you've been falling short? How do you plan to change that?
An example is just kind of going to the gym. I mean, it's if you're let's say a normal days, I go to the shop and I'm there for, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8 hours. And then the thing is when I go to the gym, I know I'm going to see a lot of people that I know, and I'm going to I love talking to people, but I'm going to have conversations with them.
Right.
And, sometimes I just want to get in there and get out in 45 minutes to an hour, but that, like, not fear, but kind of just realization that it's probably going to be longer. It's not going to go the way I want it to go because I have a kind of a responsibility to do that for the business and for myself, and because I also do enjoy it. And then sometimes I'm just like, I talk myself out of going. Like, it's just, and I've tried everything. I've tried going super early when no one's there. I've tried going super late. I've tried wearing headphones, but then you just seem rude. And it's just one of those things where I have to accept that's what it is, and it's fine. And most of the time I'm totally okay with it. But just sometimes you just want it to be not that.
Yeah, man.
And really, it sounds silly when I talk about it because it's like it's really not that big of a deal. But
right, yeah. It's not that big of a deal, but at the same time, I think anything that we struggle with, when you talk about the thing, usually doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but there's a reason why it's a struggle. Like, it's become a big deal for a reason. Yeah,
that's one of the reasons why it's so good to talk about it.
Yeah,
because you're like, oh, well, it's not that bad. But, just that. I mean, I guess the other thing too is just trying to not become too comfortable. I think that's kind of another thing. It even correlates with the first thing we talked about is once you do start to see some success and you feel good, I think comfort is something that can slip in really easily. And that's the thing, like, I feel like that kind of right now, but I'm not making the same bad decisions I made the first time. You know what I mean? So it's not dangerous. It's just, it is dangerous, but it's more of like a slow thing. And I'm obviously aware of it, but it's just that it's knowing that you can't stay comfortable for too long. And if you are comfortable, you have to kind of artificially create some discomfort to not let yourself fall into that trap.
Right. Yeah. To push yourself forward.
Yeah.
One of the things I've found, for at least for exercise, that's worked for me is I gave up this concept that I have to be in the gym for an hour and a half. I was like, I'm not in a place right now where I can do that. I just work out in my house. I work out in my basement. Like, I can see my workout mat, 10 feet away from me. Yeah. And I just do 20-minute work. I do like Tabata workouts, 20 minutes a day, some kettlebells and some dumbbells and body weight. I'm like, that's, for right now, that's good enough. It's actually great.
Awesome.
Like, if I can get that in, then I'm happy.
Yeah.
Because it became all or nothing for me. It became like, well, if I can't go to the gym for an hour and a half, then I just can't work out. And I'm like, well, then I'm just never going to work out.
All or nothing. You saying that's great, because that's kind of something I struggle with and it's not even working. Sometimes it's fitness as a whole. It's like, oh, well, if I'm not eating perfect, then what's the point of going to the gym? And if I'm not going to the gym, what's the point of eating great? Like, if I'm not taking my supplement, if I'm not getting sleep, if my schedule's too crazy, you can find a million reasons. And that's something that's super bad.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people struggle with that. So.
Yeah, it's easy to fall into it. I mean, I was stuck in it for a number of years, really, honestly, before I was like, just do something. Something's better than nothing. That's what I would tell myself. So real quick, we got to pause, shout out the sponsor of the show. When we come back, though, I want to talk, because this core value of communication is everything is really important. So I wanted to know, because communication is the core for everything. It's the core of great leadership. It's the core of how you communicate with yourself and your relationship with you, your relationship with others. And when you're running a business, communication is vital, but a lot of people get it wrong. So I'm curious, where was it back in the day? How do you handle it now? We'll talk about that in 1 minute. Are you struggling to make consistent, valuable content for yourself? Do you want to have an efficient and effective way to create content that attracts the people that you want to connect with in life, the people you want to build relationships with in business? Do you want to be the go-to authority at what you do, at what you're great at? Would it be helpful for you if you had a platform that connects you to incredible people in your industry? The kind of platform that gets you leads and lands you clients without you having to beat down anybody's door or blow up anybody's inbox. Whether you're already creating content or you're desiring to start and it's something that's been kind of burning inside of you for a while, I urge you and encourage you to check out the Pro Podcaster Academy. Get started right now. Join the waitlist at robzwentz.com.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world globally. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, join the Connected Leaders Academy today. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JASCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
Joe, loving this conversation, man. So talking about communication, how did you used to handle it compared to how you handle it now? Because I think one of the biggest lessons we learn in business is how to communicate properly. And usually we figure that out by doing it improperly and having to correct it.
The most, common way I would handle it incorrectly in the beginning, even honestly up until recently, it takes a long time to get good at it, is I would see something going on that was wrong in the business, just maybe the way an interaction was going, or something was left undone, stuff like that. And then I would just opt to not bring it up because I'll try to sometimes be a more passive person, or sometimes I'll just be like, oh, well, let's see if this becomes a habit before I say anything, which is, looking back, is silly. Just because you don't want to be, sometimes you just don't want to feel like you're like that super stern guy who has a problem with everything. You don't want to be. But then I realized that you're not doing, let's say it's an employee, you're not doing that employee any good by doing that for them. It's selfish to do because it's the easy route, and I'm taking the easy route to avoid this artificial confrontation in my head that actually is not going to even exist for the most part. And maybe it does exist 1 out of 10 times. But and then I I got fed up with myself, and I eventually I remember sitting my team down at the time. I was like, hey guys, like, going forward, if I see something done wrong or incorrectly, I'm going to bring it up literally in the moment or as soon as I can. I don't want you to take anything personally. It is to help you get better. It is to help us as a team function better. And it doesn't need to be a discussion. I'm just letting you know that's going to happen going forward. And now, I barely have to bring anything up because things are just fixed so fast that we don't have a lot of issues. We do every now and then, but most of the time it's pretty easy because took care of everything after that. And when I implemented that, I was having to almost every other day say something to somebody. But again, as time went on, and there's only so many things you can say.
Yeah, and those things start to pile up. I always think of it like just in your house even. There's things in your house that you've left laying around that will lay there. Well, maybe you're not like me, but they might lay there for a week or more. Yeah. And you'll see them every day. And you'll be like, oh, there's that thing I need to do again. Oh, there's that. There it is again. Yeah. And it starts to build. It starts to like kind of piss you off. Like I start to get mad at myself. I'm like, why do I keep doing this? Yeah. Like, why don't I just pick the thing up? Why don't I just take care of the thing? So if that happens at home, right, so easily, it can happen at work, especially when it comes to people. I was having a conversation with a business that I'm working with, and they said when we have to implement a technology or some sort of like automation, no problem. If it's just something that doesn't talk back to me and I have to implement it, we can do it easily. When it comes to people, though, implementing it becomes a bit trickier. You might have more apprehension to doing it because people have their own opinions. and they're going to agree or disagree, right? So you got to like factor in the people situation. This
100%.
person might not agree with the thing that's happening right now. So how do you find that somebody might not agree with how you want to do this, but you as the business owner make the final decisions, and you know what's right for the company? How do you navigate that with people? Because that's an issue across every business ever.
It depends really on the situation. I mean, I'm always open to listening to ideas. I mean, really, that's what the core values are for. It's does it align with it? So let's say someone wants to do something an easy, more efficient way. It is easier, it's more efficient, but let's say it takes something out of it that's special to our process, and therefore it loses some of the magic, or like one of our new core values is a simple one. It's just do your best work. It's a very plain, simple term. But if it was something that was like more convenient, or easier, but it made it be not our best work, then it would go against that core value. So we have to we just use that a lot. And I'm also too, I mean, a big believer in efficiency, and I tell the staff that inefficiency being that sometimes being a small brick and mortar store, the systems and processes you have when it comes to customer care and communication with them and building relationships is everyone these days just wants to rely on these CRM marketing email funnel things that are so boring and typically no one cares about. And we don't do, we have those, but we much more so heavily rely on, we follow up with a lot of our customers, like one-on-one, we text them, we'll sometimes call them. And we have a whole process for it. We literally it's as simple as keeping a notebook that we write notes down in every day. And then depending on the date, we look at it, we follow up with those people, make sure they're doing okay. We make it about them. And we implemented that about a year and a half ago. And it's been incredible for us. That's one of the things I wish we had done from the beginning. We'd probably be 4 or 5 times the size of the company we are now.
How much time does that add to the work week when you do that?
It's really not a lot. I mean, because there's parameters for it. We're obviously not going to follow up with someone who bought a smoothie. Like that's just, you know what I mean? There's other systems for that. Like we have a punch card system that's automated. We follow up with people who purchased supplements who we haven't followed up, because we don't want to follow up with them every time, because then it seems robotic. So there's just a lot of weird stipulations. It takes no more than 30 minutes a day to do typically. I mean, it's pretty easy. And the way our store is, like it's busy and then there'll be a lull. So there might be 1 hour where you see 10 people, and then there might be an hour where you see 2. Mm-hmm. So there's always time to find time to do it in the day. So
I love that though, man. That's communication is key. Like that's it. Like communicating with people and those personal relationships, right? I mean, they're physically coming in and seeing you. So continuing that personal relationship is so important.
Yeah. The biggest part of doing that was just wanting to extend the customer experience past it just being in the store. Like, and one thing when we hire new people and we teach them that process, I can guarantee that almost none of them have ever done anything like that before at any other job. So it's very foreign to them, especially at a retail job. Like maybe if they sold cars or houses or something, so these big, huge purchase items, that's kind of a normal thing, or it should be, hopefully. But in a small retail environment where you're dealing with supplements, it's just, you don't see people do that. I mean, so we do have to teach them how to do it. And, but again, like the customers never expect it, so it's always a nice surprise to them. And it also gives us the opportunity to, let's say a customer is unhappy about the product they bought. Let's just say they didn't like the flavor, or it just didn't work for them the way that we anticipated that it would. And a lot of times people are going to just be passive about that. They're going to just, I'm probably not going to go back there. I didn't really like the product. I didn't really like, for whatever reason. And we reach out to them. ask some questions, which opens this door for them to leave us some feedback. And then they do. And then we have an opportunity to fix it. And now we just took someone who was never going to be a customer again to someone who's now coming back. And not only are they coming back, but now they love us because they've never in their lives had a business follow up with them that way. And then now not only are they a customer, they tell all their friends. That's how it works. And it sounds simple, but it's a process that over time, I think you can't even really measure the impact of it. So,
yeah, man, that's the truth. You can't like put on paper what that does. We try to
actually keep track. It's another silly system where it is any person who comes in who's new, we always find out if someone's new. We ask them how they heard about us, and and sometimes they'll tell, if it's word of mouth, they'll tell us, oh, so-and-so. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And we can connect those dots, but we try to disconnect. Did they hear about us through social? Did they just Google us? Did they hear about us from a friend, a flyer, and some sort of ad? And then we tally it up every day and submit a report at the end of the month. And then that's how we know where to put more of our marketing budget. So,
well, yeah, man, I was looking, even at like your Google reviews, you guys are, 230 some reviews, 4.9%, are 5 stars. So obviously doing something right there. And that goes a long way too.
And almost all of those are from the past. I think a year and a half ago we had 80. So
okay,
we really started taking it more seriously. But,
cool.
Yeah.
And I tell people that all the time. It's like you've had customers for years, and you're not collecting those reviews. You're doing yourself a disservice, and people like if they love what you're doing, they want to talk about it.
Happily do it. Yeah.
So it's really easy to do. It's also easy not to do. So that's awesome, man. But as we come to the close of this thing, I just want to invite people to check more out about you and No Limits Nutrition. So they can find you guys on Instagram, No Limits Nutrition, RVA on Instagram. Also, of course, the website, you can go there as well. No Limits Nutrition Center, right? No Limits Nutrition Center.com.
That's right.
And if you want to be the authority in your space, like I said earlier, I invite anybody who wants to start their own platform to check out our Pro Podcaster Academy at robzwentz.com. Joe, love this conversation. Great to talk about these sorts of things. This is the kind of stuff that if you're just stepping into business, you're thinking about starting your own business, there's so many pitfalls, and just the perseverance, the passion for what you do, and making real, true connections with the people that buy things from you will go so far. And so I loved the fact that you're teaching those lessons to the audience, because people need to hear this stuff. And I know everybody's already heard this. You need to hear it again and again and again, because oftentimes things don't stick right away. I know you know this. I know this. Like, I need to hear it a lot. I need to be beat over the head with it until I implement it. So I'd love to hear that, man. Anything you want to leave the audience with before we sign off?
Just, keep going. Don't stop. Yeah. Don't stop.
Good advice. Good advice. I love it. Another true testimony of breakthrough. Until next time, this has been the Unstuck Movement.